COVID-19 infections are on the rise again in Canada, and the Omicron variant threatening to make that number surge a whole lot faster. Here, for instance, in the nation's capital, public health has now confirmed community transmission of the new variant. South of the border, there is also growing concern, especially as vaccine uptake there slows down. White House Chief Medical Advisor Dr. Anthony Fauci is watching the situation closely. I spoke to him about Omicron, boosters, and what the months ahead could look like. Dr. Fauci, nice to see you.
Good to be with you. Thank you for having me.
So obviously, I'm going to start with Omicron and what we know or don't know. What is your understanding of this variant at this stage?
Well, there are three major questions that everyone is asking right now since it was recognized literally just a week or so ago. And that is, is it transmissible? Is it transmissibility much higher than the other variants? Namely, does it have a transmission advantage over Delta? Looking at what's going on in South Africa, which has the most data, it looks like that its doubling time is clearly less and shorter, which means it transmits more rapidly than Delta and very likely other variants also. The next is, does it evade immune responses? It's referred to as immune evasion. And the answer is that it seems to evade the protection of certain, but not all, monoclonal antibodies. And it certainly diminishes the protection from what we call the two-dose mRNA vaccine regimen. But the good news about that is that people who have gotten boosted, namely the third dose of an mRNA, particularly the Pfizer, which we have the most data, that reconstitutes the protection to a very good level, which is very encouraging news. And the last question is, what is the level of severity that this particular variant induces in people when they get disease? And although the data is still preliminary and you don't want to make any final conclusions, it looks like it might be that the level of severity is less with Omicron than it is with Delta. This is the data we're getting from South Africa, some recent data from the UK. So hopefully that holds true as we get more data.
You know, experts obviously predicted variants. That is not surprising. But I think some experts were surprised with the evolution of this particular variant. Were you? And if so, why?
Well, the number of mutations in this variant compared to Delta are really strikingly high. There's about 50 mutations leading to amino acid substitutions. About 30 of them are in the important spike protein of the virus that leads to the binding to human cells, and more than 10 are in the critical part of the spike, which is the receptor binding domain. So most of all of us in the field were surprised by the sheer quantity of the mutational changes.
You mentioned the UK there. Obviously, everyone's watching closely to see how this unfolds because, as you pointed out, it's doubling at roughly every 3 days. In the United Kingdom, the population there is 70% vaccinated. But I wonder what this tells you about the future of the pandemic and the likelihood or a timeline of it becoming endemic instead of pandemic.
You know, I don't think we can make any greater speculation than we could have made before Omicron.
Right.
We know that variants will arise. What we are hoping is that as we get more and more people vaccinated, not only in our own countries, namely in Canada and the United States, but also throughout the world, because as long as you have raging transmission of infection in any region of the world, that serves as the incubator to get more variants. So we've got to take care of our own country, but we've all got to make sure that those of us in developed rich countries like Canada and the United States play a role in getting doses to the developing world.
You talked about boosters and how they seem to be needed against Omicron. Do you think that means that vaccine requirements, vaccine mandates are going to have to move from double doses to triple doses?
That's possible. Right now, the requirement or the official recommendation of what constitutes fully vaccinated still is 2 doses of mRNA or 1 dose of J&J. But obviously, We are going to be looking at the data in real time. And if the data indicate that you should change the requirements, it'll be changed. But one thing is certain, that for optimal protection, a boost clearly is indicated.
Yeah. In Canada, just under 80% of our eligible population is now vaccinated. In the US, that number is around 60%. Obviously, you're still working hard to try and get more people vaccinated, but I wonder why you think Canada has been a little more successful in that uptake, and what you make of how we're doing.
I don't think it's because Canada is trying any more or less than the United States is, and vice versa. I think it's just the nature of the culture of the population that we are in the United States in a period of very, very intense political divisiveness.
Yes, yes.
And many of the people who are hesitant to get vaccinated are doing it really on ideological grounds, which as a public health person doesn't make any sense at all to me, that when you're dealing with the common enemy of a virus and you have a highly effective tool to protect you, that because you're in a particular political ideology, you decide you don't want to get vaccinated. I just think that's really unfortunate.
Do you think it's then easier for Canada to manage a pandemic because we don't have as much polarization?
I think ultimately that's going to be the case.
Yeah.
You have 80% of your population vaccinated. We have 60. That's going to make a difference.
Yeah. Last question. The COVID cases are surging again in the United States, really going after the unvaccinated, to your last point. What do you think the winter months look like here, Dr. Fauci? And would you expect to see further restrictions in some parts of the country?
Well, I'm not so sure about further restrictions. We certainly have CDC guidelines about wearing masks indoor and being careful in travel and things like that. My situation is that I feel that we have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing the envelope to get people vaccinated and to get boosted if they are fully vaccinated. That is the way we're going to prevent an even greater surge than we are already seeing thus far. We're having a daily average of about 115,000 new cases per day. That is an unacceptably high level.
I know you've seen a lot of things in your life. I wonder if you thought it would last this long, the pandemic.
No, I did not think it would last this long. I mean, obviously, pandemics generally have a big burst and then level off and come down. We're having multiple countries, including the USA, have at least 3 or 4 surges or waves of infection. That's really unprecedented when it comes to pandemics.
Okay, Dr. Fauci, very nice of you to make the time for Canada. I appreciate it, sir.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.